Hero. Any person admired for courage, nobility, or exploits, especially in war. Any person admired for qualities or achievements and regarded as an ideal or model. They rise to the occasion. They meet the challenge. They inspire us. They are heroes. John Mihalowski, nicknamed Mike, born in 1910 in Worcester, Massachusetts. Mr. Mihalowski served in the U.S. Navy as a deep-sea diver and worked his way up the ranks. He retired as a lieutenant commander after 30 years of service and now lives on the Gulf Coast of Florida. As a Torpedoman First Class, Mihalowski received the Congressional Medal of Honor while serving on board the salvage ship U.S.S. Falcon. Mihalowski was responsible for maintaining the diving bell, an undersea rescue chamber. Diving was hazardous duty in those days before World War II. Though undersea rescue and escape techniques had been rehearsed, they had never been used in an actual emergency. That is, not until May 23, 1939, when the submarine Squalus went down.
The loss of Squalus in 1939 shocks the world. Trapped on the ocean floor in more than 200 feet of water, the men of Squalus fight for their lives. But rescue equipment is rushed to the scene.
It was a good weather. It wasn't rough at all. A little bit of swell, but not much.
The scene was extraordinary. Ships gathered around a distress buoy sent up by the Squalus, marking the location where it rested, 240 feet below the Atlantic Ocean's surface, off the coast of New Hampshire. The sub had gone down while it was still on sea trials. John Mihalowski's skills as a diver would be tested, as would the limits of the rescue equipment, primitive by today's standards. As the operator of the diving bell, Mihalowski would attempt to rescue survivors from a submarine for the first time in American history.
The chamber itself is like an elevator. I felt safe in it. I didn't feel any danger to me. Because like I say, I was the one who was running it most of the time.
In fact, operating the rescue chamber was a very risky procedure. Running the 10-ton chamber along supporting cables required a delicate touch to maintain proper pressure. If the pressure surpassed the tolerance of the cables, they would snap, suffocating the men inside. The newsreels told of the harrowing task which faced Mihalowski as the story unfolded off the coast of New Hampshire.
When a submarine fails to rise, and 240 feet beneath the tiny Mark buoys, 59 men are consigned to a living death in a steel tomb on the ocean bed.
But the divers had to get down there first to hook up the bell to the submarine. They had to find the submarine first, for sure. They drug for it. In fact, there's the sculpin. When she found the bell, somebody wrapped it up and put it up on a cleat on there, and the swell snapped it. They lost communication with the submarine. In fact, they lost the location of it at that moment. And the next thing that they did, they used tugs to drag. They finally snagged it. A diver went down. They set a diver down on the snag rope with the cable from the bell to be hooked up to it. And that was in the, by the way, that was in the forward section of the submarine, in the forward torpedo room, where we made our connections with the bell.
Divers go down to the U.S. submarine Squalus, only a few miles off the coast of New York. And now it's the dramatic question whether they can be saved from the slow death of suffocation and starvation.
The two men that we had aboard there. We had one man that was aboard that ship. There was a member of the Falcon, a seaman, and he was lost. Then we had an electrician in there, and he was in the battery room, and that's where they found him. I thought of him. I didn't know it was that time, but I was thinking about him, both of those men, because I knew they were on board.
But science comes to the rescue. A steel chamber is to be lowered, and if it can be fitted over the submarine's hatch, the men still alive can be brought to the surface. But their life still hangs by only a slender thread of hope as the great steel chamber slowly sinks on its mission of mercy.
Inside the steel chamber, John Mihalowski.
I better do the best I can and know how, and I better know it all. All I could think of was, and what I was thinking about, was I hope we get there in time to get them all. Whether we can get down there and do it as fast as we can. Because then, like I say, we weren't sure the first trip, we weren't sure of much at all. We weren't sure that we were going to pick up any of them or all of them.
Heroes will be back in a moment. We now return to Heroes. John Mihalowski discovered that he wanted to be a diver at a very young age.
I learned how to swim by a gang of men we used to hang around with. We used to go up in the quarry. And the quarry was about 15 feet up off the water. And it was about 100 feet deep. And when they went up there, the big guys, the older ones in the group, they'd jump off that thing, and I wouldn't do it. And that's when I really wanted to learn how to swim better. But they were good to me, though. They threw me in the water. And here I am, dog paddling. So they did. They jumped in for me, and I didn't say nothing. I just tried to get to the beach. They pulled me out and said, "You afraid?" I said, "No." "Afraid for what?" I said, "You're all here." I was just a kid. So when I was somewhere in the neighborhood about 12, 13 years old, I happened to come across the Falcon salvage ship in Boston due to my sister and her boyfriend. He took me aboard. I took one look at it, fell in love with the diving outfit and the possibility of getting underwater, and I determined that I was going to join the service or do something and become a diver.
16 years later, John Mihalowski was a member of the Falcon's crew and in the ship's diving bell, going down to rescue the survivors of the submarine Squalus. Torpedoman First Class John Mihalowski received the Congressional Medal of Honor for extraordinary heroism in the line of his profession during the rescue and salvage operations following the sinking of the U.S.S. Squalus on 23 May 1939.
I'll attempt anything. I used to try anything. But you don't go headstrong, and just jump into anything. I don't think that way. I like to get it done as fast as I can, but in safety, and make sure I accomplish it. I don't want these things to do it in a hurry and miss half of it. I want it all done right.
The diving bell was divided into two sections. In the upper compartment sat Mihalowski and his crewmate, adjusting the water and air pressure of the rescue chamber, taking her down towards the Squalus. In the lower compartment was a winch with a cable which pulled the diving bell towards the submarine. A rubber seal secured the chamber to the submarine. Air pushed the water out of the lower chamber, and Mihalowski went down to open the forward hatch of the Squalus.
And I was in such a hurry to get to it that I left about 6 inches of water in there. And that water was cold, 32 degrees. But anyway, I jumped down into it, and I banged on it, and I opened up the hatch and let the water fall down. Well, they must have thought that water was coming in, because they wouldn't let me open the lower one until I crawled down into the tube and get down into the submarine itself, way in, to bang on it, and then open up the hatch. Once I opened the hatch, the water just flowed down there, and there's all these faces looking at you. It was really something. That was amazing. The only thing I can think of is, hello, fellas, here we are.
During the salvage operations, Mihalowski made important and difficult dives under the most hazardous conditions.
I told the captain, and I was going to take 7 or 8 men off long board. And he said, all right, he picked out the ones. He went up first. The first man I pulled out was a civilian, and he was a naval architect.
And when it returns to the surface, the drama of waiting becomes mingled joy and sorrow. More than half the crew are still alive, and the first 8 are at this moment being helped to safety.
The rescue chamber made 3 more trips to bring up the survivors. Each trip took 4 to 5 hours. On the 4th trip back to the Falcon, something went wrong.
We went up to 150 feet, and all of a sudden it stopped. You couldn't get up, couldn't get down. We looked down in there, and all we could see was the winch. It looked like a wire had been got in between and wrapped around it and stopped and halted. It just jammed. Nobody knows why it happened. But anyway, they had a time then to send a diver down and to see what he could do about getting that thing unhooked. Of course, we lowered ourselves right to the bottom. They actually lowered us themselves. I couldn't pull myself anymore. They lowered us down to the bottom. And as we landed on the bottom, the divers went down, took a look at it, and they couldn't find nothing in it, so they unhooked it. Unhooked it from the submarine. Now this time, Commander McCann, he was the one that designed that thing. They decided to pull it up by men, 6 or 7 men, by us using buoyancy down there. Blow out some of the water and make it a little lighter. And he just told us how long to blow, how long to flood. And little by little, they pulled us up.
Meanwhile, at the Navy Yard, wives and relatives await the return of the survivors. To many, the hours have seemed like years. For some, the watch will prove in vain, for their men will never return.
Somehow or another, the forward section, all the inside inner compartment closures were closed. But the ones in the after section, they weren't all closed. One had to be open someplace. And that's exactly why she flooded.
The grim task fell to John Mihalowski to verify the fate of the men in the after section of the Squalus.
That's the 5th trip. That's when Batters and I went down to find out if anybody was alive in the after section. Once we get the bell and the downhaul wire replaced, they had to replace that. Then we went down to the after section. And this one was something a little different.
During this trip, the bell's air pressure would have to equal the pressure of the surrounding water. Carbon dioxide could not be vented from the chamber in order to maintain the pressure. For Mihalowski, it was like being drunk, and there could be no suction seal joining the rescue chamber to the submarine. It was very dangerous. If the pressure wasn't maintained, the ocean water would flood their rescue chamber. Mihalowski made the last extremely hazardous trip of the rescue chamber to attempt the rescue of any possible survivors in the flooded after portion of the Squalus. He was fully aware of the great danger involved, in that if he and the other member of the crew became incapacitated, there was no way in which either could be rescued.
When we finally land down there, we have to bolt ourselves to the submarine with 3 big bolts. And they have a ring of metal around with clap ends. And we hook them on to pad eyes in the submarine itself and bolt ourselves and make ourselves a part of the submarine. That's another thing. If anything happened there, you wouldn't have a chance. If you're a part of the submarine, they couldn't get to you. No way. So anyway, when he bolted himself down onto it, once we got that, he could open up the hatch slowly. And the pressure inside naturally started to come in because they were lower than we were. So I had to put more air into it, which was good for us. Gave us a little bit more fresh air. And then he opened up the hatch enough, and the water flowed in. But once he got it back out again, he closed it, and we asked him on top side what we found. They said, well, try it once more if you can. So we did. We put more air into it and put the water level down inside the lower compartment and in the submarine, and open up the hatch a little bit. Could see a little better, but couldn't see nothing. So they said, well, just secure it and come on up. So we reversed the position and came up.
But for all those who were trapped in the after compartment, there is no hope. To save the others, they were deliberately shut off from hope of life as the water rushed in and the bulkhead door had to be closed. So they died that these might live.
I did all I could, let's put it that way. All I could, and if I could do more, I'd have done more.
John Mihalowski and 3 others involved in the rescue received the Congressional Medal of Honor.
Teamwork, that's one thing we had. We had good teamwork in it. That's one reason I liked salvage. It seems like everybody that's involved in it will come at, and everybody want to help. Everybody want to do something that knows what to do.
Heroes will return in a moment. We now return to Heroes. John Mihalowski's Medal of Honor citation hangs in his home in Florida. It was signed by Franklin Delano Roosevelt. For Mike, it was a proud moment when he received the medal from the Secretary of the Navy.
There was a feeling, you know, you get a little shaky. In fact, I was astounded. I never expected that. It means that I've accomplished something that I've been after all my life. Be a good diver, do my work, and I did. And I've been rewarded something I never expected.
John Mihalowski and his mates from the Squalus operation, William Batters, Orson Crandall, and James McDonald, were the last to receive the Medal of Honor for action in peacetime. Between World War I and World War II, the Medal of Honor was awarded to 18 individuals, including Charles Lindbergh for his dramatic flight on board the Spirit of St. Louis across the Atlantic Ocean from New York to Paris. He was presented the Medal of Honor at the White House by President Herbert Hoover for displaying heroic courage and skill as a navigator at the risk of his life by his non-stop flight in his airplane, the Spirit of St. Louis, 20 and 21 May 1927, by which Captain Lindbergh not only achieved the greatest individual triumph of any American citizen, but demonstrated that travel across the ocean by aircraft was possible. And another explorer, Admiral Richard Byrd, received the Medal of Honor for flying to the North Pole in 1926. For distinguishing himself conspicuously by courage and intrepidity at the risk of his life, in demonstrating that it is possible for aircraft to travel in continuous flight from a now inhabited portion of the Earth over the North Pole and return. But most of these peacetime medals were given to the little-known men of the Navy for dramatic rescues at sea. Newspapers in John Mihalowski's hometown in Massachusetts told of his exploits. He recalls the reaction of his father.
My dad, I'll remember that. They told me that he was the proudest man in the city, I think. But my sister's brothers told me that he was marching up and down with his chest sticking out. Yeah, he was kind of proud. Proud to find out what I did anyway. Not for the medal, but for being in the position I was in to help people.
Hero, a person admired for courage, nobility, or exploits. A person admired for qualities or achievements and regarded as an ideal or model. He rose to the occasion. He met the challenge. He inspired us. He is a hero.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to help us produce more compelling historical content like this, please like, comment below, and share this video with fellow history buffs. And of course, be sure to subscribe to help keep history happening.